The bill is the Combatting Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill. It's a comprehensive package of reforms which creates serious offences for hate preachers and leaders seeking to radicalise young Australians. It increases the penalties for hate crimes offences. It ensures that offenders whose crimes were motivated by extremism have that factored into their sentencing. It creates a new offence for inciting hatred in order to intimidate or harass. It expands and strengthens the ban on prohibited symbols, and it makes it easier for the Minister for Home Affairs to cancel or refuse a visa for people intent on spreading hatred. And it creates a new framework that will enable the Minister for Home Affairs to list organisations as prohibited hate groups. Once an organisation is listed, it will be a criminal offence to be a member, to recruit for it, to donate or receive funds or support that group in any way. The legislation will also set up the National Guns Buyback Scheme, bringing Australia's world-leading gun laws into the 21st century and getting guns off our streets. As I've said before, there are more guns now in Australia than there were at the time of the Port Arthur massacre. That is not good enough. The terrorists at Bondi Beach had hatred in their minds, but guns in their hands. This law will deal with both, and we do need to deal with both of these issues. These are complex laws, and our focus is ensuring they're effective and practical. We will continue to navigate, no doubt. There will be legal processes because this is an area of constitutional question. This is new laws going further than they ever have before. But we want to support the efforts of our police and our security agencies. We want to ensure that Australia remains a society where everyone has the right to be proud of who they are. And we also want to make it clear that conduct which is hateful, dangerous and divisive will also be illegal. Because just as anti-Semitism and racism are an offence against our Australian values, they should be an offence against Australian law. This afternoon, we've referred that legislation to the committee. So the processes from here is that we will engage constructively. It will be an opportunity for people to make submissions through appropriate processes. We want this to be timely, but we also want there to be a proper process, which is why we are going to have this process over the next week. National unity is vital to our national security, and our government will strengthen both. I'd ask the Attorney-General and then the Minister for Home Affairs.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And can I start by echoing the Prime Minister's comments about our fellow Australians who are doing it so tough during these challenging times with those fires. As the Prime Minister said, today the Albanese government has taken another important step towards a safer, more unified Australia, with Cabinet agreeing to the government's stronger, more robust hate speech legislation. The government announced our intention to introduce these laws in the days following the abhorrent Bondi terror attack, and I'm very pleased that in a relatively short period of time we've been able to draft, consult and develop this vital package of legislation. Let me be clear, once these laws are passed, they will be the toughest hate laws Australia has ever seen. They will specifically target those who seek to spread hatred and disrupt social cohesion in our community, and it will send a clear message that this conduct will not be tolerated. In particular, as the Prime Minister outlined, the bill introduces an aggravated hate speech offence for preachers and leaders who promote or threaten violence against protected groups or members of groups. There will be increases in penalties for hate speech offences relating to advocating or threatening force or violence against protected groups or members of groups and their property. It will make racial hatred an aggravating factor in sentencing in a number of Commonwealth crimes. It will create a regime for listing organisations whose leaders engage in hate speech or promote violence or racial hatred. And it also introduces a new racial vilification offence that criminalises inciting hatred based on the grounds of race. Now, these laws build on the hate speech legislation the government introduced last year and the hate symbols legislation that came before that. This government has moved with urgency and care to draft these laws, consulting with experts and stakeholders, including the Jewish community. The draft legislation, as the Prime Minister said, will now be referred to the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, and the public will be able to make submissions. As I've said, this is not a time for partisanship. Broad support right across the Parliament is essential to making these laws a reality and keeping Australians safe.
Minister.
Thanks, Prime Minister, and join for my responsibility with NEMA as well in the huge concerns with everybody battling those fires. Following the atrocity of the evil anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Bondi, we needed to deal with the motivation and the method. This legislation will deal with both. The motivation was fuelled with hate, that form of racism known as anti-Semitism. There have been organisations which have played a game for a long time in keeping themselves just below the legal threshold. They were called out last year by Mike Burgess, the Director-General of ASIO, for the real harm that they do to our national security. The two groups that he called out specifically were the Nazis, the National Socialist Network, and Hizb ut-Tahrir. Two groups which, through their spreading of hate, have a direct impact on increased risk in our national security environment, but have kept themselves just below the law for while they have created a pathway for others to engage in violence, have been careful to not explicitly call for it themselves. They've kept themselves just below that threshold. This bill will lower that threshold, and lower that threshold to the extent that we can within the Constitution. We have had enough of organisations that hate Australia playing games with Australian law. We will also increase powers that I would have as Immigration Minister in terms of the cancelling of visas. In terms of racist bigotry at the moment, I also have to test each time whether someone's coming on a public speaking tour or the extent to which someone might cause social discord. This draws a line in the sand and says racial bigotry of itself is a reason to be able to refuse a visa. Finally, with respect to guns, the legislation will allow us to use the AUSCHECK system. The AUSCHECK system to effectively create a pathway where states and territories can have a two-hurdle process before someone is issued with a gun licence. The final hurdle remaining the fit and proper person test that the states already have. But to be able to put in place in advance of that an AUSCHECK system, which will allow the intelligence that is held by ASIO and by the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission to be able to use to create the extra layer of caution if somebody is themselves a risk when they're applying, or if the risk resides in a member of their family or a member of their household. With all of this, we deal with the motivation and the method. We deal with the why and the how.
Sure.
Minister, the Attorney said that broad support from across the Parliament will be necessary. How open to serious suggestions from the Coalition or the Greens will you be to changes on hate speech laws?
Well, we're open to constructive suggestions. This is draft legislation. We've spent a lot of time getting it right. There has been a lot of consultation already, not just with the Jewish community, but with other communities as well. We want to get it right, but if someone has a constructive suggestion, then it will be considered on its merits. Paul?
You said you want to deal with method and motivation, Prime Minister, but there's been more political debate around the gun reform than the other section on hate speech. Why not split those sections up, and is that an attempt to wedge the coalition?
No, this isn't about politics. It's about getting it right. And those people who conducted this anti-Semitic terrorist attack at Bondi on the 14th of December had both the motivation from being inspired by ISIS, but they had the means. There was a very moving speech by Peter Maher's brother at St Mary's Cathedral just last week, where he spoke very much about someone who's an anti-Semite is someone who can profess hate an anti-Semite with a gun is something very different as well. And so we need to deal with both.
Prime Minister, there's been some controversy around the cancellation of a Palestinian-Australian author appearing at the Adelaide Writers' Festival. Do you have a view on whether she should be reinstated, given your concerns you've said before about social cohesion at this time or otherwise?
With respect to any writers' festival, we leave those decisions to the festivals themselves. We don't tell festivals who they should put on and who they shouldn't.
Prime Minister, Mike Burgess has said repeatedly that anti-Semitism and online radicalisation are some of the biggest threats to Australia's social cohesion and security. How have you consulted with intelligence agencies on what should be in these laws, particularly around online radicalisation?
They've all been involved in the involvement of these laws. Our National Security Committee met again this morning.
Prime Minister, can I ask, what's your judgment on social cohesion in Australia today? How are we holding together as a society?
That social cohesion is under pressure globally. There are a range of reasons why that's the case. The device being held in people's hands here is one of them as well. We see an increase of polarisation of views around the world. We see not just social media, but indeed mainstream media sites, if you look at the headlines that are on stories, erring on the side of shouting rather than talking, yelling rather than explaining. And that's a pressure which is real on our society. It is something that we need to have a broad discussion about. This is just one element of it. So I want an Australia that goes to our values, where everyone is respected, where the Australian covenant is that when people come here, they leave any hatreds and prejudices in the customs hall and recognise the strength that is here in our diversity, one where we're able to discuss differences in a mature and respectful way, rather than accusatory, rather than looking to always blame someone else. One of the things that we see is that on the Middle East, people have different views. They're entitled to express those views. What they're not entitled to do is to hold someone to account for the actions of others because they are a young boy wearing a school uniform going to a Jewish school, or a young woman wearing a hijab. That is not acceptable. And it is something that I certainly hope that the Royal Commission on social cohesion, that's one of the issues that we need to address, not just a government. We, as a society, need to have that debate and we need to be able to move forward.
Prime Minister, on the new classification for hate groups, can I just get a sense of what the penalties will be for those offences? And do you think they'll be similar to what is currently under the offences for associating with a terrorist group? And just on the potential legal challenges that legislation might incur, given that Hizb ut-Tahrir have already said that they are seeking legal counsel, do you expect that there will be a High Court challenge?
I'll start with your last question first. I mean, HUT is a global organisation and they have a long history of engaging legal counsel to ensure that they do not fall foul of laws in particular countries. So we have crafted this legislation in a way that is robust, and we understand, of course, that these are laws that may be challenged. That is the reality. But the government stands by our drafting. We stand by ensuring that we are as tough as possible, acknowledging, as was said previously, that there are constitutional limits. But again, if a challenge is brought, we will vigorously defend those. In addition to what I've just said about the offences for prohibited hate groups as well, there will be new offences criminalising certain dealings, interactions and engagements with organisations that would be a prohibited hate group. There would be a number of defences that could apply here, but indeed we are looking, if you're talking about the racial vilification offence, we would have a new offence that's punishable by a maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment. So there would certainly be serious penalties that are proposed here. But again, one of the reasons why we are putting this out for consultation is to garner those views.
Jacob, then Alan.
Thank you, Prime Minister. In terms of the process, the speed at which you're getting this legislation through Parliament, obviously it's going to a committee that does not have Teals or other independents on it, and then to the Senate. Do you have a deal with the coalition to get this through the Senate next Tuesday by the looks of things? And what do you say to people who would say that's a real rush, given the complexity of the legislation that we're talking about and the trade-offs that are involved?
This isn't a time. I've been in this building for a while, as have you. There have been times where legislation's been introduced and carried through both houses in a day. People are going to have a week before Parliament sits to examine this legislation. We will provide a full briefing to the opposition this afternoon. They'll have the legislation before the briefing, as was requested. I've been meeting with Susan Lee every week formally and going through and keeping the opposition informed on this. I have a call scheduled with the Liberal Waters this afternoon. We will make the officials available to all of the crossbenchers as well as to the Greens from tomorrow. And in terms of timing, I think that there is an urgency, but matched with getting it right, which is why we've spent considerable time. We had to sit down and consult, as was appropriate, with groups at the end of last week, as I indicated. I don't speak on behalf of the opposition, but we have engaged with them. I've gone through very clearly and transparently what the time frame is, and so I would expect that there will be cooperation. I note Stephen Lowy's comments on the front page of the paper today. I think this is what people want to see, and when I met with Mr Lowy, which I met with some time ago, was certainly constructive. I've spoken with the President and Convener of ECAS this morning as well, and so people are being kept informed. People will have an opportunity to contribute.
Is it still your intention for the cost of the gun buyback scheme to be split 50-50 between the Commonwealth and the states? And are you confident you've got the support of the states and territories on that part of the legislation?
Yes, well, that's up to the states to speak for themselves. But I think that states who don't participate will have to justify that to their own people.
And there seems to be some concerns from some eminent Australians, some legal scholars, around some untidiness around the Royal Commission arrangements as they pertain to Dennis Richardson. Can you confirm exactly what Mr Richardson's status, the status of his review within your Royal Commission is? And do you believe that he will be able to get to the bottom of potential intelligence failures without coercive powers, protection for whistleblowers, that type of thing which a Royal Commission can deliver?
I have absolute faith in Mr Richardson and the work that he will do. His report will form part of the work of the Royal Commission.
You don't speak for the opposition, but has Susan Lee given any indication if she might stylings or anything when you've spoken to her?
I do not verbal anyone, least of all the Leader of the Opposition. It's up to her to speak on behalf of the Opposition. I speak on behalf of the Government.
Prime Minister, one question for the Home Affairs Minister,
Sure.
and then yourself. you kind of have highlighted Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Nazi group. Is it your expectation directly that then you will immediately move to make those hate groups illegal? Is there anybody else you're looking at? And just for the PM, this legislative package will be very effective in a sort of broadcast Australian contained context. But we've talked about Hizb ut-Tahrir being a global organisation. How are you going to deal with the fact that a lot of this radicalisation, a lot of this content is coming from outside of your jurisdictional reach?
First of all, I've phrased it the way I have very deliberately in terms of one of the cases that will come subsequently is apprehended bias. And I'm not going to use this question to walk into that. So if I put it in the exact order, which I did for a very deliberate reason, the ASIO, the Director-General of ASIO has called out those two organisations and explained they kept themselves just below the threshold. We are lowering that threshold.
And on the global issues, look, evidence will come out from the Richardson Review and during those processes about the connections that the Akrams had or didn't have, how some of that radicalisation occurred. We know that a lot of radicalisation can occur on the dark web. This is one of the challenges that will be looked at. It is not easy. It is hard, as Mr Richardson has indicated previously, but then Mr Burgess, as the Director-General, has indicated very clearly it is difficult when it comes to a lone wolf. Now, in this case, you have a father and son that has a particular dynamic. And I don't want to preempt some of the evidence that will come forward, and that will all be examined. But it presents a challenge, and we understand that that challenge is very real, which is why it's been identified by the security and intelligence agencies.
Prime Minister, President Trump is openly considering further military action in Iran. Are you concerned that action there might further threaten social cohesion in Australia? And would Australia play any support or assisting role should that occur?
Look, we're not considering that, but I will make this comment about Iran, that we stand with the people of Iran who are standing up for their human rights, standing up for their dignity, standing up for a change that is required. This is a regime that has oppressed its own people. This is a regime that is cracking down on people protesting, and we don't know what the real death toll is from people who've been either killed or injured for expressing their basic human rights. What we do know is that this is an oppressive regime that has played a bad role, not only for its people, but a bad role internationally, which is why I stood in this very courtyard and expelled the Iranian ambassador for the involvement of their agencies in attacks here on Australian soil. So we stand with very much the people of Iran at this time. Last one.
About urgency, and considering the fact that you are bringing Parliament back 2 weeks earlier, do you anticipate people will be arrested or visas revoked under these new laws immediately?
Well, we haven't passed the laws yet. I'm hoping that the laws can be passed efficiently and quickly with the support of the entire Parliament. And I hope that the Parliament passes the laws. You'll all get to see it, the draft legislation tomorrow. And I will speak to you tomorrow. Thanks very much.
The Prime Minister there speaking in Canberra, confirming Parliament will return next week for 2 days. On Monday, there will be a condolence motion for the victims of the Bondi tragedy, and legislation drafted in the wake of that attack will then be debated on Tuesday. He said there he hopes it'll pass the House of Representatives before question time begins on Tuesday, and then to be debated and considered in the Senate that afternoon, ensuring the passage that day. So it's one bill cracking down on hate speech and symbols as well as hate preachers. We heard Anthony Albanese there singling out that there will be tougher action against groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and Nazi groups. The Home Affairs Minister, of course, will have the power to cancel visas if anyone is spreading hate, and gun reform will also be wrapped into that bill. And there will be a briefing for the opposition this afternoon. The Prime Minister open to constructive input on that. And just at the end there, we also heard him asked about the situation in Iran at the moment. He said, "We stand with the Iranian people who are facing an oppressive regime."